Hey, welcome to HR Famous, brought to you by Kinetics, the leading RPO recruiting firm for growth companies. Named by HRO Today as the top midsize RPO provider, Kinetics uses its unique skill-based recruiter model to deliver on RPO engagements, allowing them to customize scope to meet your unique hiring needs. If you have recruiting challenges and want to consider RPO as a solution, give Kinetics a call. Find them online at kineticshr.com. HR Famous is also brought to you by HRU Tech, a contingent staffing firm specializing in engineering, IT, and technically related placements across multiple industries. If you're looking for technical talent or searching for a career, look no further than HRU Tech. Find them online at hrutech.com and call them today.
HR Famous, we are back. I'm Tim Sackett, and as always, because it's kind of from week to week, we got changed up a little bit. But I have two of my favorite people in the entire world with me today. Jessica Jlee out of the DMV and Marriott Corporation. Jessica, how are you doing?
I'm excellent. It's Friday. Not bad.
Friday.
Fake Friday, we like to call it.
Fake Friday. And we also have with us, coming from his cottage, a little place on the lake in southern Alabama, Kris Dunn.
What's up, Tim? What's up, Jlee?
What's that town called in southern Alabama?
It's actually called Equality.
Equality? Really?
Yes. Equality, wow. Alabama. Look it up.
That is amazing based on the topics we have to talk about today.
Now I'm going to multitask and look it up.
Right? I think it seems made up, right? Like, I think he just made that up. That's not for sure.
So small town. It's like literally like 50 people. And it's right on the edge of the lake where I have a small shack.
Yep.
You know, we got to redo the roof, stuff like that. But it's great.
Handed down by generations after generation. That's nice.
Well, not really, but okay. Yes.
All right. So we were going to talk about three things today, or we're going to actually talk about a few things today around all the stuff that's going around the universe socially, especially within America. And some of the stuff is just how organizations are responding. And I think I'm fascinated by all of this. So first one, Adidas Corporation, Adidas for those in America, Adidas for everything else outside of America. Did you know that, Katie? Adidas?
Is that really the way they say it?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Really?
That's really the official pronunciation of Adidas is Adidas.
Wow. Okay.
That's like outside of the U.S., people call it Nike.
Like, they don't call it Nike.
Not Nike.
No, it's just Nike.
Or Porsche. Like my uncle had a t-shirt that said Porsche. Or Porsche is not a two-syllable word. It's just Porsche, not Porsche.
Or may I say Marriott?
Nope. Marriott.
We won't go down that road. You're right. There we go.
Have we done that? Like, I think out of the 19 podcasts, I think 20 of them we've actually talked about Marriott.
My batting average of 300 with mispronouncing it. So
Adidas Corporation came out as part of their BLM. Everyone was sending out all these emails, right? We support. And Adidas said, we support to the point of we are going to guarantee 30% of our hires over the next year are going to be diversity hires. My initial reaction was, I love it. I love that they threw a number out there and said, we're going to go and chase this and meet this number, right? Then also I have a ton of questions around what that means. One is, it seems like since I started in HR 2 or 3 decades ago, I've been told constantly by those who know way more than me in the diversity space and inclusion space that it's not about a number, Tim. It's not about a number. We don't talk about numbers. And all of a sudden, everyone's celebrating Adidas for coming out with a number. Jlee, reaction. What do you got?
I'm channeling my boss, old mentors, because, there's that old saying around what gets measured is what gets done. And I don't know, I get the sentiment, but sometimes I just feel like you got to start somewhere and you got to measure something, right? Otherwise, how do you hold people accountable? That's what I don't understand.
Katie?
I like it. I think it's a big goal. And I think it's contrasted, Tim, and you can like come in here and talk about this a little bit. I think it's contrasted with what we typically know in job groups. Like if you think about affirmative action plans, et cetera, in very like key job groups, my take, just based on the little bit I've read, is that Adidas is making this broad overarching goal, but they're really not defining where those hires are going to come from. Mm-hmm. So I think start with the big goal, say that this is our pledge, and if it progresses them, I think what we could expect over the next months and even the next couple of years, we're going to find out more about where those hires come from. And hopefully they'll hit not only the entry level, but a lot of the professional grade and leadership roles as well.
Yeah, I think that's the one miss I felt. The one big question I had was because we see a lot of organizations come out and they'll say, oh, we're 39% diverse, blah, blah, blah. But then when you really dig into the numbers, they go, oh, but we're 5% of our director and above is diverse. And I think that's really where I want to see is to say, oh, how are we changing as we go up the ladder, and making some progress there is where I think that, when we have to dig into that number, I love the fact that they actually put a number out there to be able to reach, like Jlee said, like you have to start somewhere. And if we're struggling to make any movement, like Jlee, you and I talked to Torn, like the crazy part is so many of these organizations for decades have been talking about diversity and inclusion and their numbers almost stayed exactly the same. And it's like, can we stop talking about it and start doing something about it? Can we start measuring it for Christ's sakes and at least throw it out there? And then we'll talk about that in a little bit as well in some of these organizations. But I just think that we have to dig in a little bit to those numbers and say, hey, are we really trying to do something here that's going to be impactful for the organization?
Yeah, it's like, I think putting a number out there is a starting point, right? They got to be able to make some traction against it. But what I worry about like lately is, people are making statements, they're getting on board with certain things, they're feeling impacted, but it's like, what's the long term here, right? So can they sustain it? Are they going to do something? Is this a thing that they continue to focus on, over time? So numbers good, somewhere to start. Let's see what happens, right?
I think too, Jlee, when you think about a big goal like this, you expect that it's going to be reported on, kind of to your intro comments, Jlee. Yeah. So I think you can see kind of pretty quickly that because they made the statement, they're going to be held accountable. It's going to be in, board meetings. It's going to be in annual reports, if not quarterly reports. And it's just going to be out there. I think it's interesting. I also think, Tim, that it's interesting to contrast just putting a BHAG out there, a big, hairy, audacious goal, and saying, hey, we're going to like start
BHAG.
The BHAG versus like, all the tech companies that struggle with diverse hires in the Bay Area. What would happen if a Google said that, hey, we're going for this overall goal rather than breaking it down job group by job group? Because we know that they have, tech companies have struggles, in certain groups. And a lot of that is purported to be based on feeder groups and, issues in feeder groups that take time, et cetera, whether it's gender-based or race-based. But I like the BHAG. It's got a good feel to it. And I think they're going to be accountable to it because I think they'll have to be.
So I've shared this story before, and I'm not going to share the entire story, but the gist of it at Applebee's is that we had a measurable diversity goal for leadership that I had and my entire leadership team had surrounding females, Blacks, Hispanics, manager level and above in Applebee's restaurants. And I had general managers and HR people listening to this podcast. When we start talking about numbers, here's what's going to happen. The white hiring manager is going to come to you and go, oh, so now I'm going to be forced to hire a Black person. I'm going to be forced to hire a woman, not the best person, blah, blah, blah. That's going to happen. So be ready for it. The other thing that was going to be, for us from a measurement standpoint was, I'd have people come like going, well, the only way I can, increase my measures is if I fire myself and replace myself with a woman, or whatever. And our leadership team was really good about it. And they were white dudes, right? One female, like 3 white dudes on the leadership team, a senior leadership team, C-suite. And they were like, you know what? Let's have that happen first. Let's get to that point, and then we'll have that conversation. Otherwise, shut your mouth. Like go change your diversity and then we'll talk about it. But you haven't even done anything yet. And you're already worried about something that's not even happening yet. And I think sometimes they were really good about putting, those folks in position like that to say, nope, this is not even an issue. And we're not going to discuss it because what you're saying is completely just irrelevant at this point, which I actually liked from that standpoint. But we know as HR professionals and TA professionals, you are going to have hiring managers that are going to push back when we start talking about numbers.
Hey, Tim, can I jump in and say that's my second favorite story of all time from Applebee's, like from your career at Applebee's? And Jlee, you don't even know this one, but I'm going to try and bring a little levity to serious topics today. My favorite Applebee story, this just happened in the last month, is a guy ran like a bathroom product by Tim and wanted help getting into Applebee's. And Tim proceeded to tell him, which was absolutely correct, by the way, that your bathroom product is going to have to be a lot tougher to make it into even one Applebee's because it's like a war zone.
Hey, I didn't dare ask like what the bathroom product was.
Hands-free thing, like, so you wouldn't have to touch the seat or whatever, right? Just COVID related. But it would never hold up to a public restroom.
It wouldn't even make it through a lunch cycle.
Wouldn't have made it through one day. Mm-hmm. There would be some 5-year-old in there jumping up and down on it. That thing would have been broke. Okay. Next topic number 2. Wanted to talk about, so we talk about, and you had just mentioned like a lot of the tech companies and stuff like this. So CNBC had an article and they were listing literally 15 or 20 different big brand tech companies. And they were saying, here's our response to BLM. Here's what they're going to do. And one after another, it was 10 million, 3 million, 500,000, blah, blah, all the money they were giving to certain charities that support this movement. Only one came out and actually had anything besides money, and it was Reddit. And their CEO basically stepped out of his board seat and said, fill my seat with a black person. That would be the right thing to do. Otherwise, it was just a bunch of cash. Oh, by the way, which they have mountains of. They could burn a mountain of cash they were given to BLM and they wouldn't even recognize it was gone. And my first reaction, you guys tell me if I'm right or wrong, my first reaction was they're buying their way out of this conversation. Because all they're going to say now is to say, oh my gosh, we support it to the tune of $20 million. What are you doing? Instead of actually making real change happen. KD, I'll start with you.
Well,
I said 1,000 words. Okay, Jessica.
I don't want to be jaded, but I guess I would say that it's, real change takes time. We just talked about like hiring, right? And I think, if I put my jaded, side away for a second, I would say you want both. You want funding as appropriate in contribution to the cause. And then over time, you've got real change. And Jlee, I think what I've seen, you've surely seen it as well, is there's plenty of activity in social that is being skeptical of the cash and is really pointing to, hey, make sure you give us real change. Like I'm looking at your board, I'm looking at your leadership team. This is what I see. And I think there's plenty of that activity that's already, I think, being probably appropriately skeptical of the money. But I would say contributions to the cause still valued, but you need change, intermediate, not long-term.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, like if I were to try to be generous towards these companies, like one of the things I could empathize with is like, to your point, change takes time. And I feel like we think about something like hiring, it's not like they're going to change it overnight, even if they are like in a position to hire. And so if I'm one of these companies, like what can I do right now? What can I do? Immediate term, I got mountains of cash. So like I could see, some value, and I'll be generous with my opinions of it to say, yeah, like you want to like knee jerk do something quickly because you feel helpless. You feel like you want to contribute, like throw money at it. Like you should, great. But is that going to be enough? Is that the only thing? I think is a fair question, but I don't know. I'm not one to say no to the money. Is that bad? I don't know.
No, I think it's both, right? I think you have to have money, but you also have to have some real like tangible kind of movement on what's happening. I'll throw out Facebook because they're easy to beat up on, and they were mentioned in the article of giving a lot of money, right? And there's other issues that they face with other stuff. I mean, and they're like famous punching bag right now for everybody. My thing is they started giving money to a lot of these movements 6 years ago. In 6 years, and here's the issue: is that they're saying, hey, we can't find African American technical talent, or we can't hire it, or whatever. In 6 years, you could have grown an army of African-American software engineers. And so don't tell me that it has to be more time. You had 6 years, you had the money, you've made a decision not to do this at that point, right? And that's how I felt about seeing all the money being thrown at it and acting like, oh my gosh, we're the savior for BLM because we're giving this cash. I don't know, just my opinion.
I think the other thing that comes to mind is I don't know that just because a company has the ability to write a check, I don't know that makes that company better than another company that's in dire financial circumstances and can't write that check. I think you've got the Facebooks of the world, and again, write the check, support the cause. It's valid, but I think in the big scheme of things, on the big scoreboard here, I don't know that in today's world that gives them any more points than somebody that can't write the check, especially coming off COVID.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, we're going to jump to topic number 3, last topic for today. Starbucks made news today, and then we'll talk about the full story of it. Story was they had baristas showing up wanting to support BLM. Wearing BLM merchandise. Corporate came down and said, nope, you can't do that. Uniform standards, blah, blah, blah. They obviously support Pride. And so they, the reaction was from BLM was, wait a minute, you allow your baristas to wear Pride stuff. Why can't they wear BLM? Which I might go, hey, it's Pride month. It's June. Like, come on, like you're encroaching on their stuff. But anyways, I do think, So then what happened was, right, is they came, the real thing was they weren't allowing the baristas to wear anything they wanted Pride. It was Starbucks given, T-shirts or whatever they had, buttons that were Pride, and they didn't have anything BLM. Now, Jlee, you had, right before we came on, you said they kind of reversed course a little bit on this.
Yeah. I mean, so it's not funny, but it's funny because like if you're a big company, big brand, like, man, everything is being scrutinized, right? And you've got a bigger employee population to be more vocal. And I guess what's just interesting is like, they had to pivot quickly and go from here's our stance. And then people were upset and frustrated with it, and then pivoted quickly again and said like, okay, maybe we were wrong about it. So I mean, good for them that they're able to pivot quickly, recognize maybe what was an error. But I also I feel for them. Like I have had to spend a lot of time on uniform guidelines and standards. And, for a company like ours, like we think a lot about what should a uniform look like at a Ritz-Carlton and what's important about consistency. And then what does the uniform look like at a W hotel or something else? And like as innocuous as uniforms might seem to the outside world, like there's so much that goes into it from a brand perspective that like I can see where Starbucks would have been coming from at the, onset, but, good for them for pivoting quickly, listening to the voices, being aware and, not dragging their feet on it, but not easy to be in the spotlight like that. I feel for them.
Katie, you've written a couple of uniform policies in your day. I have a feeling. Give us some feedback.
So I can't wait to hear about the Applebee's uniform policy.
There's an Applebee story.
But so I think it's interesting to hear Jlee talk about uniforms because I think kind of the brand standards are there. I just like from a Starbucks perspective, like with their support, Pride Month and some of their past kind of supportive communities, it's a little bit of a stumble from a communications perspective, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know how you wouldn't see this coming. And I think like as a layperson who really hasn't done a lot of uniform work, I think it all comes down to, trying to control like, hey, what's our official T-shirt? Like, for this cause, right? you see it coming, you know that you need to support, and you know you're going to have employees that want to be there. You know, you've got other causes being supported. I just don't see how you don't like whip up a t-shirt and be in front of that. And even if you can't do it on the weekend question, say these are coming. They're at the printer. That's my take.
Hey, this is William Tincup, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about Practitioner Corner podcast. It's a wonderful podcast about the journey, the paths of how practitioners, both HR and TA, kind of go from high school, college, all the way to where they are right now, some of the things that they've learned, how they've been successful, people that thrive around them, etc. It's a fun podcast. You'll love it. You'll learn from it. Subscribe to it. Thanks.
My take is that from a uniform standard standpoint, they never should have even allowed the Pride stuff or the BLM stuff or the Me Too stuff or whatever. I think you keep your uniform the way it is, and then you actually protect your entire employee population from not having to have these conversations, not only with guests and customers, but with each other as well, by saying, hey, here's what this is. You can believe anything you want. We want to hire an inclusive workforce, but the reality is we don't need to show that right now while you're on the job for this 1 8-hour shift or 6-hour shift or whatever you're having. It's so much cleaner to go, nope, here's what we do. Black pants, black shirt, Starbucks green, thing you throw over, and that's it. That's what you get. And I'm actually fine with that, because I think operationally it's so much easier to manage versus going, hey, by the way, you can now support whatever. And like you just have, because I think the guest that comes in, your customer that comes in, sometimes gets confused or sometimes doesn't support whatever that might be. And I just think it causes mass confusion. And like Jlee, obviously you work for a giant brand and you have hotels and there's certain things, right? If I go to a Ritz, I expect a certain level of professionalism and cleanliness and just higher end touches across the board versus going to, a brand that's not as high as the Ritz. And I just think that there's so much to that of saying, gosh, you open Pandora's box when you start saying, go ahead, the bigger you are, especially, go ahead and wear something that whatever that might be, versus going, oh, and then like KD, if we're going to go and print a shirt, now I have everybody and their brother going, oh, well, I'm celebrating Hanukkah, so can you print the Hanukkah shirt now? Like, no, we're not going to do that. Yeah.
So it's a slippery slope. But if I was the CHRO, at a big retailer like this, and I'd already been on a position, I'd already offered up a cause, and a significant cause at that, my standard would be print the shirts. Just print them, print the shirts. Let's go. But it is, once you do it for one great cause, you really are open to doing it for other great causes. Now, is that a slippery slope all the way down to mediocre causes, which I understand are in the eye of the beholder? That's an interesting question, right? And that's where you kind of get caught in the slippery slope. But no question, they should print the shirts. Jlee, like we were talking about this before we came on, they have an official shirt now in their pivot, correct?
Well, so that's, I think, the interesting thing. They had a shirt in the works. It was brewing. I think it was called like Keep It Brewing, but it's probably like wanting to keep that uniformity, be stubborn. They're like, the shirt is coming. And that was probably the downfall. Like they were stuck on that, as opposed to saying like, okay, until then, like do what you want. We want to support you. So
especially if you're down, like how do you get 250,000 shirts out in a day?
Yeah. Tough. For sure.
Vistaprint.
Shout out to Vistaprint. All right, Jlee, KD, I'm going to let you guys get out of here because we have a guest coming in talking hourly hiring. Thank you so much. And we will see and talk to you guys next week. Have a great week. Hey, everybody, just back with a guest I want to bring in. I want to talk about hourly hiring, especially pre-COVID, post-COVID. We keep hearing like how that's going to change and be completely different. And so I bring in on a subject matter expert. He would never call himself this, but I'm going to call him that. Jonathan Zoob is the VP of sales from Fountain and also have been in our industry for at least a decade, right?
Yeah. 9+ years. Just about
introduce you. So tell us who are you? What's Fountain? Give us the whole rundown.
Sure. Appreciate you having me, Tim. As mentioned, my name is Jonathan Zoob. I'm the Vice President of Sales with Fountain. I've been in the industry in staffing, recruiting, HR technology for a little over a decade now. Fountain Been with the organization for about 9 months. Really interesting, and my reason of joining is we're solving a problem, right? There's so many systems out there that are great at what they do, but there was nothing that I could find with that focus on hourly hiring, knowing it's the majority of the world, the majority of the US are hourly workers. Our system is 100% laser focused on making a better process for both employers and candidates to help get jobs.
Cool. So my first big question is, when you were an account executive with Golden State, did you ever get to sit in the floor seats, like right on the floor?
I didn't get to. I sold them some to Steven Spielberg. That was my claim to fame. But I never got to sit in them. In those days, they were $10 seats. I had access to that arena. It was pretty awesome, but it was also when we were terrible. So it was
the old Oracle Arena. Like, yeah. I never got to sit courtside at an NBA game, and it's probably one of those bucket list things. And there's a couple of times, like, I'm in the Detroit metro area, and like Pistons haven't been good. So there's a couple of times I'm like, oh, it's a Tuesday. I'm just going to pull them up and see how much they're playing, like, some other crappy team that nobody wants to see. And they're still like $800. And I'm like, I'm not going to spend $800 on a Tuesday night to watch them play like Memphis. I know. Well, I'd probably watch Memphis, but I wouldn't pay $800 to. So.
Well, similarly, it's a bucket list for me. And it was the day before the league shut down. I was eyeing these seats for the Brooklyn game against the Warriors. And I was like, to your point, it's about $800. I was like, it's never going to be like this again. And I just had them in the cart, and then it all got shut down. And so it's still on the bucket list.
So I was in February, I was in San Francisco. We were out there for conference. And so Matt Charney and William Tincup and Craig Fisher and I all said, hey, let's take off and go to the Warriors game. It was midweek, and I got online. I got third row. So we were the row right behind the floor seats. Nice. And we were right in the corner. So we didn't have any floor seats actually in front of us. So it was kind of like that. Like, we were like probably 10 feet away. But it was still pretty cool to be that freaking close and to hear them and, all of that. The new arena is an amazing arena.
It's beautiful. Yeah. The day I quit, I bought season tickets, and I've had them ever since. So that's my home away from home. So it's a little weird because now I'm just in my home now. There's only one home.
All right, we'll get back to talking business, but because we could talk NBA stuff all day long. So obviously we're in the midst of the pandemic. There's some organizations that are still hiring like crazy, but even before, and some that just have kind of shut down for a while. One of the biggest complaints I would get from TA leaders, HR leaders, even senior executives of corporations was never, I wouldn't say never. It was rarely that, hey, Tim, they would say, hey, we're struggling to find like tech people or someone like that. But it was the biggest complaint and pain they had was, we can't hire hourly workers right now. And again, this was talking, it was ultra low unemployment right before the coronavirus, but still, it's a pretty typical thing that I talk to a senior executive, and they're like, Tim, we don't understand. Like, we think we have pretty good people working for us. Why the hell can't we hire hourly talent? So, as we take a look at this coming out of the pandemic, there's going to be a lot of changes. Like, Zoob, what do you think is, what do we see happening that's going to change? That was, here's old school, here's new school.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've had quite a few conversations lately about people actually thinking about what that change management looks like, because it's a big lift, right? Everyone's used to using the one system for everything, and it's the jack of all trades, master of nothing theory. But It's one throat to choke. Hey, I just want everyone in one system, and I think we're starting to hit a breaking point where people are seeing that doesn't work, or they're buying supplemental tools to try to help the system that they currently have. And it's been pretty interesting to see some of these larger organizations that have a huge volume of hourly workers and constantly hiring for these roles, considering, okay, well, maybe I need something that's specialized. But it's tough. It's a tough bridge to gap because it's a big change for them. Having this separate system, it's just change is hard for everyone. So
what I think I know when I talk to like heads of TA and stuff, every time they're looking at their recruiting tech stack, right, they're always like, oh, well, we have this ATS. And a lot of times they bought the ATS because the recruiters are like, we can't hire software developers or we can't hire whatever. Like, and it's always the high end stuff. But when you take a look at all of their hiring, 90% of their hiring is hourly workers, and they're doing it by the thousands, and it's a hiring mass, and so they always think like that's not the most, typical, or not the hardest thing for them to do. And so they buy or build a process and a platform, that's around basically desktop jobs, or salary jobs, professional jobs. And so like, I know the biggest pushback that you and I have both heard when we sit there and say, look, you should have a process and a stack built just for hourly hiring, especially mass volume. It's one thing if you're going to hire 10 hourly workers a year, you don't need you don't need it. You probably don't need a stack for any of that, right? You can just do it. But if you're going to hire 100 a month, 10,000 a year, 100,000, a million, like, high volume kind of hourly hiring, or you have seasonal hiring where you go from hiring 10 a month to all of a sudden now you need to hire 500 in the next 45 days. You need a mass volume hiring system. But, I think heads of talent struggle with that, saying, how can we justify having these two systems? And so what would you say to that?
My first question is what you're currently doing working? Because it doesn't sound like it is. So if it's not, like, why not explore this, right? Like, what the cost of doing nothing is probably costing you a lot right now. And the way I tend to look at this is if 30% of your workers are hourly, that's probably closer to 60% of the hiring that you're doing all year, just based off of turnover. So the majority of the hiring you're doing is essentially being ignored with the systems that you're using today. And it creates just sometimes the light bulb, you see it go off, like, oh, that makes some sense. The reality is getting them to change and think about it and how they allocate the spend, because it all comes down to dollars, right? If the product was free, they'd probably use it in a heartbeat. But the real question is, how do I allocate X for my legacy system and Y for this external thing, and is it worth it? Is the ending question. What's the ROI?
And I think they have a new piece of this that gets thrown in there with COVID, right? Because now they have, hey, we're coming back. We need to start hiring again. Oh, by the way, we can't have the same process of come fill out an application and come, in for an in-person interview. And what I see when we see like the really kind of forward-thinking organizations that have built an hourly kind of hiring stack for volume is that what we see is so much of what we do on the hourly side can be automated completely where there's zero touch, right? So when we think about change management of that, do you guys run into, or do you see like the hardest shift from old to new, right? Old school being, hey, here's how we've always done it. We're going to continue to do it. We're just going to throw more bodies at it, or whatever. To the new, is it that we have to give up some of that stuff? Is that, because the automation takes away like all this tactical stuff that we used to get to do and now we don't do. And then what do we do with ourselves? Or, is this going to cost me my job kind of thing?
I think that's like a philosophy that's in some people's heads. But if you think about the people that are actually doing the hiring for these hourly roles, they're running a restaurant on a day-to-day business, right? They're running a warehouse. They're not TA professionals. So our job is actually to make their bosses, who are the ones considering buying this, look good, because, hey, I filled all these recs. And so, the system that we've built is built for that non-TA professional to not have to worry about some of this stuff, and just have people that have been pre-qualified show up for that first interview or phone screen, do a quick video interview, anything that you need that doesn't need that human touch, signing documents, whatever. It's all there for you, so that person can run that restaurant and not have to deal with the things that they're not trained for. Yeah,
it's one of the most. I'm literally like not even 2 blocks away from me is the corporate headquarters for Two Men in a Truck, and I know their head of TA really well. And being a franchise model and having literally 2 Men in a Truck franchises all over the country, and they try to support them from the corporate office for hourly hiring. But she's like, Tim, that general manager of that franchise, of that one location, is the person who's we're asking them to do recruitment marketing. Yeah. We're asking them to screen. We're asking them to interview, onboard, do all of that. And she's like, the reality is we're lucky to get them to put a sign out in front that says help wanted now, like, or whatever. Right. And it becomes so difficult knowing that we're asking these non-TA professionals to actually hire all the time. The other piece that I think is not more important, but as important, might be more important when you think of what's happened over the last couple of weeks with Black Lives Matter, is that when we now are expecting a non-TA HR professional to do a lot of the hiring, we already know ourselves, because if we're TA leaders, HR leaders, we have all this kind of self-insight to say, oh, we have unconscious bias. But yeah, now we're going to somebody that maybe hasn't even had the training or the development to say, what biases do they have? And are they putting the organization at risk from a brand perspective, because there's just no way that they're going to really understand their own biases, and they're going to continue just to hire those people who look like them versus hiring a really diverse, inclusive, workforce.
That's a really good point, and clearly top of mind right now. And anything that we can do, again, as HR professionals, we're trained through a lot of this stuff, and the organizations that are thoughtful about it, it's great, but that doesn't mean that the line level manager that's doing this is getting that training. So just adding that as another reason why to use a tool that can help you achieve and alleviate some of those stresses just makes a ton of sense.
When you think about time savings, cost savings, from an hour, when you guys, because you guys have taken, obviously really big high volume clients, and you said, hey, here's how you were doing it. Now here's how the new process, the new tech stack's going to work. What's the typical kind of things that they see that get better?
It's time to hire. That's the number one. One of our clients was on a traditional system. Their time to hire was about a little under 2 weeks, 12 days. Within 3.5, 4 months, we reduced that down to 3 days. So, time is money. It's the easiest way to equate this. It's the easy way for it to make sense for some of these folks that might be evaluating tools and where to spend the money. 9 days equals a lot of money, especially when you're doing hundreds and hundreds of thousands of hiring. So just being able to reduce that piece is a massive motivator for organizations.
Well, I think even if you think about the average hourly worker, and when you take a look at all the studies, one of the things that pops up constantly is if you can't turn around and engage them immediately when they're interested in you, they're gone to someone that will, right? So if you're waiting 12 days, 10 days, 5 days, that person's gone. They're probably already have worked a week at your competitor.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. So you're always going to be getting second-rate talent, because those who are moving on the first-rate talent, those who people are really moving fast, are going to be those companies they're being able to do 3 days. If you think about what do you think aspirationally, what could that be? What could that become? Like, how fast could that be that we should be able to hire an hourly worker?
Well, look, to shamelessly plug my company, Fountain, fountain.com, we build a workflow that takes you from hitting apply with no friction of having to create a password and then jump through 15 different clicks and links to scheduling that interview in minutes. And that really is the differentiator. Is you go on most organizations' website, some of them have done a great job with step one, separating like hourly and corporate. But from there, it's almost like, why'd you do that? Because it's the same process. And then you get an email that someone may or may not check very frequently just based on that skill set, saying, thanks for applying, we'll be in touch. And so to your point, that candidate's gone. So you've really got to capture that candidate as they're engaged with the application process, because if you don't, someone else will.
I have a buddy whose daughter was home for school from college. And so, she comes home, it's middle of, pandemic, her internship got canceled. They're like, hey, you got to go find a job. And I won't mention the company, but I'll mention the process, because, he's in TA. And so she applied online, mobile, and she went through the entire process and got an offer. And he said the entire thing from beginning to end was 18 minutes.
Incredible.
It's incredible, but that's the future of what we're trying to do. And that if we think about hourly hiring, mass volume hourly hiring, that's what it could become. That's what it should become. Now, that's not every company. Last question, and I'll get you out of here. When we think about the interview, because to me, that seems like the one thing that continues to hold us back, is because we have those non-TA leaders, professionals, operation leaders who are doing the hiring, and they always have this feeling like they know, right? Well, when I see Jonathan, I'll know if I want him or not, and they feel like they have to have this in-person face-to-face interview or a video interview or whatever. They have to see the person. Do you think in the next 3 years, we're going to start to see mass hiring hourly without an interview at all? Why or why not?
I think for some roles, absolutely. And I think there's no reason for it in a lot of these roles. Think about a lot of these companies that are helping during COVID right now with the shopping. If this person can pass a background check and pass these minimum credentials and can truly be a frontline warrior, I think was even the term you use, like they're the ones that are out helping people during this time, where there's no interview needed. So pending the role, I absolutely think that's going to be something that organizations should take a look at. It's going to be the ones that are willing to take that chance at first, and then the sheep will follow.
Cool. Thanks so much. Hey, everybody. Jonathan, how can everybody find you?
Feel free, just go to fountain.com. Would love to give the opportunity to show you guys a demo, tell you what we're all about. Find me on LinkedIn. Happy to have any conversations possibly can. Jonathan
Zoob, Zoob. I actually did the demo, and I've actually hired mass hourly hiring. It's completely different than anything you've seen from a traditional ATS standpoint. And when we think about if you could perfect and reinvent hourly hiring, it's what they've been able to do. So it's worth a demo for sure. Check them out. Jonathan, thank you so much. HR Famous Podcast. We are out.